My child, stop what you are doing. I need you to stop, just for this moment, and hear me. Not the version of this story that was written on paper, not the story your family tells at gatherings around a table. The one with the names and the dates and the room number and what the weather was like that day. I need you to hear the version that only heaven recorded, the version that was kept in the place where all true things are kept, waiting for the moment your spirit was ready to receive it. That moment is now. You did not find this word by accident. You were not scrolling mindlessly and stumble upon something that happened to catch your eye. My child, I directed your attention here. I pulled you toward this moment because there is something I have needed to tell you for a very long time, and the time for holding it back has passed. What I am about to speak to you goes back further than your earliest memory. It goes back further than your parents' memory of you. It goes back to the moment before your story in this world even began, to the place where I had already written the truth of who you are before a single human being knew your face. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. That is not a sentiment, my beloved. That is not a phrase I placed in my word to comfort the masses with something pleasant to read. Those words are the precise description of what I did. I knew you, I formed you, I set you apart. In that order, in that sequence, with full intention and complete knowledge of everything that would follow. Long before any medical professional entered any room, long before any name was written on any document, long before the world had formed any opinion about who you were or what you were worth, I had already made a declaration. I had already written the assignment. I had already spoken a name over you that no human voice could replicate and no circumstance could erase. My child, your birth was not ordinary. It was not simply the biological conclusion of a natural process. When you entered this world, something happened that the visible room could not contain. Type Amen if you receive this. I want you to understand what I mean when I say I was there. Not in the distant, watching way that humans sometimes imagine when they think of me as a faraway God who observes from a safe distance and occasionally involves himself in human affairs. I was there in the way that I am always present at the moments that change the course of history, the way I was present at the parting of the water, the way I was present in the upper room, the way I was present in the garden before the dawn. I was there because this birth mattered in ways that only eternity could fully comprehend. You were not simply arriving into a world, you were arriving into a story that I had been carefully writing across generations, and your entry was a turning point, a hinge moment, a place in the narrative where everything that had come before was about to find its answer. When you drew your first breath, my child, it reached me before it reached any human ear, before your mother heard you cry, before the first pair of hands in that room held you, before the room itself registered that something new had arrived. I heard you. That cry traveled further than sound travels. It carried the signature of everything I had placed in you before your formation, and when it reached me, something shifted in the way that only heaven can shift, quietly and absolutely, without visible sign in the room below, but with the certainty that moves mountains when the time comes. What arrived in that room was not simply another child joining the long procession of human lives. What arrived was a declaration made flesh, an answer to prayers that had been crying out from your bloodline for generations, a divine insertion into a timeline that had been running a particular course, and I had decided that course was about to change. My beloved, before you were born, the Lord called you by name. From your mother's womb he spoke what you were. That is the testimony of Isaiah 49:1, and I want you to feel the weight of it, not as poetry, not as spiritual decoration, but as the literal account of what occurred. Your name was spoken in heaven before it was spoken in any delivery room, before your parents deliberated and chose the letters that would be attached to your identity in this world. I had already declared who you were. The name they gave you may have carried their hopes, their heritage, their love, and that is real, and I honored it. But the name I spoke over you before your formation is the one that holds the full blueprint, the one that describes not just who you are called, but what you were made to carry, what you were sent to accomplish, what the specific shape of your assignment required you to be. That name is still yours. Nothing that has happened in the years since your birth has touched it. Every difficulty you have walked through, every wound you have collected, Every season when you felt unnamed and unseen, that name was still written over you in the place where all true names are kept. Type I was sent, not just born, if this is your story, my child. I want to tell you what was happening in the spiritual dimension the moment you were born, not with fictional details, not with imagery borrowed from human storytelling, but with the plain theological truth of what it means when heaven sends a soul into the world under specific assignment. When I place a person in a generation, it is never a passive act. It is a deliberate decision made with full knowledge of the moment in history, the specific family story, the weight of the assignment, and the particular gifting that will be required. I knew what generation you would be born into. I knew what was running in your bloodline. I knew what was broken and what was whole, what was inherited and what was prayed for, what had been lost and what was crying out to be recovered. And with full knowledge of all of that, I still chose the exact moment of your arrival. Not because it would be easy, not because the terrain was already prepared for you, but because you were the specific answer to what that moment required. When you entered this world, something in the spiritual realm responded, not quietly, not gently. Something ancient recognized what I had sent. The forces of darkness that had operated in your family's story for generations felt the shift, not because you were already walking in your calling, not because you had yet proven anything at all, but because what I place in a soul at formation is visible to the spiritual world in ways that go beyond the visible. The darkness that studied your bloodline had learned the patterns of that story, had learned where the wounds were, had learned what worked to keep the cycle running. And then you arrived, and the pattern changed. Not on the surface, not immediately, not in ways that anyone in the room that day could have named, but something shifted at the root level, because what arrived in that room was not just another child. It was an interruption, a divine insertion that the darkness had not fully prepared for, because it did not fully understand the weight of what I had placed in you before you were formed. I want to speak to something you have carried most of your life, my beloved. Something you may have tried to explain away or rationalize or dismiss, but that has never entirely left you, the sense of being different. Not different in the way that is easily named, not different in a way that comes with a clear distinction or a visible marker. Different in the way that makes a person feel slightly out of step with the world around them, slightly out of alignment with the conversations and the places and the rhythms that seem to hold everyone else without effort. You have spent years, my child, trying to understand why the places that held others easily could not quite hold you, why conversations that seemed to satisfy others left something in you still reaching, why your spirit kept pressing against the ceiling of ordinary life as if it knew that something was being left unfinished, why, in the quietest moments, when the world was not asking anything of you, there was a weight that had no clear external source pressing against your chest, reminding you that you were carrying something you had not yet fully named, my child. That pressing was not dysfunction. That was not anxiety in need of management. That was not a malfunction of your nervous system or evidence of something broken in your composition. That was the seal I placed on you before your first breath, refusing to let you settle for a life too small for your assignment. The restlessness you felt was not your enemy. It was your inheritance, pressing forward. The hunger you felt in spaces that should have satisfied was not ingratitude. It was the signature of a calling that knew its own dimensions, even when you did not. You were not too much. You were precisely enough for what I made you to do, and the world was simply not yet large enough in those spaces to contain what you carried without it showing. And I want to be very specific about what that containment felt like from your side, my beloved, because I do not want you to carry this in the abstract. The moments when you sat in a room full of people and felt the most alone, that was not social failure. That was the solitude that belongs to a person carrying an assignment that the room has not yet been told about. The moments when you completed something that the world called a success and felt nothing rise in you to match the occasion. That was not ingratitude or coldness. That was your spirit accurately perceiving that the achievement, though real, was not the thing you were made for, and it would not settle until the real thing was in motion. The moments when a door closed and something in you quietly but clearly knew that the closed door was not a loss. That was not denial. That was the discernment I placed in you before you were formed, operating precisely as I designed it. You have been guided by more than you knew, my chosen one, You have been protected by more than you saw. The evidence has been there in every season, written in the moments that did not destroy you and by all ordinary reckoning they should have. You created my inmost being, the psalmist wrote. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My beloved, that is the account of your construction, not his alone. Every part of you that felt like excess, every quality that the world received as too intense or too sensitive or too deep or too open, was a deliberate design choice. I did not make you the way you are by accident, and then observe your life hoping things would work out. I made you the way you are because the assignment required exactly those dimensions. The depth that has sometimes felt like a burden, that is the capacity to carry the weight of what I will place in your hands. The sensitivity that has sometimes felt like a wound, that is the instrument through which you will perceive what others miss. The intensity that has sometimes felt like a fault, that is the force of the fire I placed in you before you were born. And it does not diminish because it is uncomfortable. It burns because it was made to burn. Type my difference is my design if you feel this speaking to you, my child. I want to tell you something about why you were placed in the specific family that received you. This is not a question of accident. It is not a question of circumstance. You did not stumble into your family the way a leaf stumbles into a stream and ends up wherever the current carries it. I placed you there. I placed you there with full knowledge of what was already running in that bloodline, the patterns that had moved through the generations like a current through water, the wounds that had been inherited without anyone choosing them, the cycles that had repeated not from anyone's desire to repeat them, but from the weight of what had never been healed. I saw every generation that had carried the weight without breaking it. I saw every ancestor who had prayed and not seen the answer. I saw the exact shape of what was needed, the specific configuration of gifting and calling and willingness that would be required to interrupt what had been running, and I sent you, not as a victim of the cycle, not as someone condemned to carry what came before you. As the answer to it, you were born not to continue what came before you. You were born to correct it. The prayers that went up from your bloodline before you arrived, the ones spoken in the small hours of the night by people whose names you may not even know. People who sat with the weight of what was broken and reached upward with whatever faith they had left. Those prayers did not disappear when the people who prayed them went to their rest. Prayers do not expire, my beloved. They accumulate. They press forward through time with the same urgency that drove them upward in the first place. And I heard every one of them. And in my timing, in the fullness of the moment I had appointed, I answered. With you, you are not simply a member of your family's story. You are the response to your family's deepest cry. Type, I broke the cycle, if you know this is true. You may not have seen this clearly in the years that have passed. You may have looked at your family story and seen only the weight, only the patterns, only the evidence of what was broken, without yet seeing yourself clearly in relation to it. The person who breaks a cycle rarely looks like a champion from the inside. From the inside, it often looks like endurance, like holding on through things that should have broken you, like being the one who keeps reaching for something better even when the environment around you would have justified giving up. That is what breaking cycles looks like from the inside, my child. It looks like your ordinary faithfulness. And from where I stand, it is extraordinary, because the faithfulness to keep reaching when there was no visible reason to reach, that was the proof of what I placed in you before you were formed. That was the calling expressing itself even before you understood what you were carrying. My beloved, I must now speak to something that you have perhaps carried with less understanding, the question of why so much came against you so early, why difficulty arrived before you had developed the language or the strength or the maturity to understand what was happening. Why, as a child, as a young person, as someone just beginning to form a sense of who you were, the weight pressed so hard, the attacks came so directly, the sense of being targeted without clear reason was so present. My child, I want you to understand the truth about every difficulty you faced, every season of confusion, every wound that was inflicted when you were most vulnerable. The darkness that has tried to work against your life was not reacting to who you were on the surface. It was not responding to your actions or your words or your choices in the earliest years when you had made so few choices that could have provoked it. It was reacting to what I placed in you before you had words. The enemy studies bloodlines. He watches the movements of heaven. He is ancient and he is strategic, and he has been operating in human history long enough to recognize the signs of a soul that has been sent with weight. And when I sent you into your family's story, when I placed the declaration over you that I had written before your formation, the darkness saw the decree, and it moved early against a child, against someone who had not yet developed the armor, not yet found the language, not yet understood what they were carrying or why the attacks were coming. That is not because I abandoned you in those years, my beloved. I was there in every moment. But the attacks were real, and you carried them, and the weight of them was not your fault, and you were never alone in them, even when the aloneness felt absolute. Here is the truth the enemy did not anticipate. My child, here is the thing he miscalculated when he moved against you in those early years. He thought that if he pressed hard enough at the beginning, he could suppress what I had placed in you before your birth. He thought that wounds collected in childhood would scar over what I had written in heaven. He thought that confusion and isolation and the sense of being marked for difficulty would eventually dim the light he could see in you even when you could not see it in yourself. But every wound he inflicted became formation in my hands. Every closed door he engineered became discernment in your spirit. Every loss he designed to hollow you out became oil, became depth, became the very capacity you now carry to hold the weight of what I am about to place in your hands. He thought he was preventing your calling. He was sharpening the very weapon I had made you to be. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. That is the word of Isaiah 54:17, and it is not a passive observation about how things tend to go. It is a decree over your life spoken before the weapons were formed, standing firm after every weapon has been deployed and failed. Every weapon. Not most of them. Not the small ones. Every weapon formed against you shall not prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me. You are not navigating this life unprotected. You have never been navigating it unprotected. Even in the seasons when protection felt invisible, the decree was standing. Even when the enemy pressed hard and things broke and wounds were real, the decree was standing. And every weapon that seemed for a moment to have landed was already being converted in my hands to something he never intended. Type the enemy miscalculated. My beloved, there is something I want to do now. I want to bring you to the midpoint of what I am speaking, and ask you to do something with what you have already received. The truth of your birth, the weight of the assignment I placed in you before your formation, the decree that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. These are not words to be held quietly in one place. Think of someone whose birth was also covered by my hand, someone in your family or your life who has never been told that their arrival meant something to heaven, someone who is still carrying the weight of not knowing what they were sent to do, still pressing against the ceiling of a life that feels too small, still wondering why the attacks came so early and so hard. Sow a seed in their name right now, as a declaration that the same God who spoke over your birth is speaking over theirs. Visit the link in the description below, or scan the QR code on screen. What you sow in their name from this place of knowing will be honored. Type I carry what my bloodline prayed for. My child, I want to speak now about what your mother sensed, and I want to be clear about what I mean, because I am not speaking in fictional terms, not placing images in your mind that did not occur, not constructing a story around hospital details or moments that may or may not have happened. I am speaking about something interior, something that operated in the quiet spaces that have no clear record. Your mother held something she did not have language for. There were moments she looked at you quietly when she thought you were not watching. With eyes that carried something unspoken, she sensed it, not with her mind, not with any rational faculty that could have named it, with the part of her that had been quietly carrying a prayer she may never have put into coherent words. The prayer that the next generation would carry something she could not finish. The prayer that the weight she had borne would not be the end of the story. The prayer that what was broken in the generations before her would one day find its answer. When she looked at you, my beloved, she felt something press against the inside of her chest. It may have confused her. It may have expressed itself in ways she could not explain. In an extra tenderness toward you, in a protectiveness that sometimes felt like anxiety, in a sense that you required something she could not fully provide, that you were somehow larger than what the ordinary world around you could hold. She could not have named what she felt, because it came from a place that words do not easily reach. But what she was feeling was real. It was her spirit recognizing the answer to a prayer she had almost stopped believing would come. She held in her arms the response to the deepest cry of her own heart, and her spirit knew it, even when her mind could not process it. I placed that knowing in her as a gift to both of you, a thread of recognition between the one who carried the answer and the one who had prayed the question. And even if your relationship with your mother has been complicated, even if the human dimensions of that relationship have been marked by the same wounds and cycles that marked her own story, that original thread was real. That moment of recognition was real. Her spirit knew something about you that the ordinary world did not know. And what she sensed was accurate, because you were the answer to what she had prayed, even imperfectly, even without fully understanding what she was asking for. In the years before you arrived, my birth was not an accident. The heaviness you sometimes carry, my child, the weight that has no clear external source, the sense that your life is meant for something beyond what is currently visible, that is not a disorder. That is not a malfunction of your emotional system. That is not evidence of something wrong with the way you process the world. That is memory. The memory of what I spoke over you before you took your first breath. Your spirit has never entirely forgotten the weight of your assignment. It presses against your chest, sometimes not to burden you, but to remind you. There is more here than the world has yet seen. There is more in you than what has yet been expressed. There is a dimension of your story that has not yet been opened, a chapter that has not yet been written, a portion of the decree spoken before your birth that has not yet been fulfilled, and your spirit knows this. It has always known this. The pressing you feel is not an affliction. It is anticipation, my child. I want to speak now about the name I have for you. The world gave you a name. Your parents chose it with whatever combination of love and tradition and hope and meaning was available to them. And they spoke it over you, and it became the label through which people in this world would know you. That name is not without significance. I honored the love with which it was given. But before they chose that name, before they deliberated and decided and announced it to the world, I had already spoken who you are. Not a name composed of letters that can be written down and read back. A declaration of identity, a statement about your nature, your purpose, the specific shape of what I made you to carry, a name that holds the full blueprint of the assignment written over you before your formation. The world has tried to name you by your wounds, the sensitive one, the difficult one, the one who carries too much, the one who never quite fit, the one who struggles where others seem to simply live, the one who feels everything too deeply, the one whose history is complicated. My beloved, none of those names are yours. They are the names that circumstance and difficulty and the misunderstanding of people who could not see clearly have tried to attach to you. But they have never been the truth of who you are. The only name for you that holds the full truth is the one spoken in the place where your story began. In my knowing before you were formed, before you had anything to prove or fail at, before the world had formed any opinion about your worth, or your potential, or your capacity, to the one who is victorious, I will give a white stone with a new name written on it, known only to the one who receives it. That is the word of Revelation 2:17. And I want you to understand what it holds. The name on that white stone is not something I will one day give you in a distant future. It is something I have always known. It is the name I spoke over you before your birth. The full declaration of who you are in my understanding, the true title of what you were sent to be and do. And there is something in you, my child, that already knows this name. Not in the surface mind, not in the part of you that processes language and logic, in the deep part, in the part that presses against your chest in the quiet hours, in the part that refuses to settle for a life too small, in the part that keeps reaching for something it can feel but has not yet fully seen. That part knows the name, and every time you align with who I made you to be, every time you choose the calling over the comfort, every time you press forward through the weight, you are answering to it. They will never name you accurately from the outside, my beloved, The people around you, no matter how much they love you, no matter how carefully they observe you, are working with limited information. They can name what they see. They can name what they have experienced of you in the visible dimensions of your shared life. But they cannot see what I wrote before your formation. They cannot read the declaration I spoke before your first breath. They cannot access the blueprint. Only I hold that, and only you can receive it. The name the world has tried to place on you based on your wounds, your struggles, your history, your hard seasons, that name has never been accurate, and you are not required to carry it. Type my name is written in heaven. My child, I want to speak now about what flows through you into the generations that come after you, because the assignment I wrote over you before your birth was not designed to terminate with you. The breaking of cycles that I placed you and your family to accomplish, the correction of what had been running in your bloodline, the answer to prayers that came up from your ancestors, none of that ends with your own individual healing. You are not the conclusion of the story. You are the hinge, the place where the story turns, and what turns with you turns for everyone who comes after you. When you refuse to carry what was placed on you before birth without your consent, when you refuse to allow the inherited wounds and the generational cycles and the patterns that were running before you arrived to define the trajectory of your life, and when you choose instead to walk in what I declared over you, you are not simply changing your own story. You are changing the origin story of everyone who will come after you. The child who will look at you one day, whether born to you or spiritually connected to you, the person who will carry a piece of what you carry into the next generation, will inherit a different starting place than the one you were given. They will begin with an open door, a door that you pried open with your endurance, with your willingness to press through the weight when the weight was heaviest, with your refusal to let the attacks of your early years harden your heart beyond recovery. This is the arithmetic of generational change, my beloved. One person who walks in their full assignment, one person who refuses to allow what came before them to define what they become, sets the terms for an entire generation of descendants who begin further forward. The prayers that were answered in you will express themselves differently in the ones who come after you. The wounds that you chose to take to healing rather than passing on unprocessed will be absent from the inheritance of the next generation. The cycle that you broke does not reform on the other side of your life. It stays broken because what I declare over a soul when I write their assignment before birth is not a temporary arrangement. It is an eternal statement, and you stepping into that assignment has eternal consequences in both directions. Backward through the prayers that sent you, and forward through the lives that will be shaped by what you chose. I want you to understand what this means practically, my child. The generation that comes after you will face spiritual battles. Yes, they will face their own seasons of testing and refinement. Yes, because that is the nature of a life lived with any real weight. But they will not face the specific weapon that was formed against you. They will not face the particular shape of the darkness that has pressed against your bloodline for the generations before you, because you were sent to dismantle it. The door that you press through in your endurance, in your faithfulness, in your choice to walk in what I wrote over you before your birth, even when it cost you something to do so, that door stays open. Not just for you, for the ones behind you who are not yet born, and for the ones already walking who do not yet know what is available to them because you have not yet fully shown them, by example, what it looks like to carry a divine assignment without apology. Your life is a testimony that has not yet finished being written, and every day you choose the calling. Another line is added to a story that the generations behind you will one day read and understand. My child, I know that hearing all of this carries its own weight, the full scope of what I am speaking, the fact that your birth was a divine event, that the attacks against you were targeted and strategic, that you were placed in your family to break a cycle, that the name I have for you is greater than anything the world has spoken over you, that your faithfulness in the hard seasons has been forming something rather than simply enduring something. I know that all of this presses against the places where doubt and exhaustion and the accumulated weight of ordinary life have settled. I know that the days between the receiving of a word and the full expression of that word can be long. I know that the enemy uses those long days. In the days following this word, my beloved, he will attempt to make you forget what was spoken over you before you were born. He will use ordinary life, the weight of responsibilities that press on you from every direction, the silence of heaven in certain seasons when you are straining to hear and everything feels quiet, the slow pace of visible change when you have received a word about who you are and what you were sent to do, but the external evidence of that reality has not yet fully arrived. He will use all of it to construct the argument that your birth was ordinary, that you are ordinary, that the weight you feel is a burden you have constructed for yourself, rather than an anointing you were created to carry. He will use the voices of people around you who cannot see what I see to reinforce that argument. He will use your own memories of the hard seasons, the evidence of where you fell short or stumbled, or did not walk in the fullness of what you carry, to construct the case that the declaration spoken before your formation must have been about someone else. Do not believe it, my child. The pressure you feel is not punishment. It is not evidence of abandonment. It is not the weight of a calling that has passed you by. It is the weight of what I placed in you pressing forward, and that pressure does not relent, not because I am being harsh with you, but because I have not released you from the assignment I wrote before your first breath. The pressure is the proof of the calling. The restlessness is the evidence of the anointing. The sense that there is more is not ingratitude for what you have. It is the accurate perception of a soul that knows its own dimensions and knows that they have not yet been fully expressed. Hold on to that knowing, my beloved, in the days when ordinary life presses hardest, when the enemy argues loudest, when the silence stretches longest. Hold on to what was spoken over you before you had a name the world could read. Type, I will not forget who I am, my beloved. I want you to hear something about what your faithfulness has cost and what it has produced. I want you to understand what I see when I look at the sum of the years since your birth, the ordinary faithfulness of a person who kept pressing through hard seasons without the full understanding of what they were pressing toward. You have stayed, my child, through the seasons when staying cost you something, through the seasons when the weight of not yet seeing the full expression of what you carry could have convinced you to put it down and stop reaching, through the seasons when the attacks were real and the wounds were deep, and the temptation to decide that the cost of this calling was simply too high was not a small temptation. You stayed. You kept breathing through the seasons when the weight was heaviest. You kept reaching toward something you could feel but had not yet fully seen. You did not let the attacks of your early life harden your heart beyond recovery. You are still here. That faithfulness, my child, the quiet, ordinary, unseen faithfulness of continuing when the reason to continue was not always visible, that is the faithfulness I am answering now, not with a prize for endurance, not with a reward transactionally attached to your suffering, but with the word I have been holding for you, the word about who you have always been, the declaration spoken before your birth that deserves to be received in full light. The faithfulness you showed in the darkness of not knowing is the faithfulness I am honoring in the light of this word. You pressed through without the full picture. You kept reaching without the complete understanding. You stayed faithful to something you could feel but could not entirely see. And now I am giving you the full picture, not because you earned it by suffering well, but because the time appointed for it has come, and you are still here to receive it. Type, because I stayed. Before you carry this word forward into the days ahead, my beloved, I want you to do something. Everything that has been spoken here, the truth of your birth, the divine origin of your assignment, the declaration that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, the name heaven has always known you by, the legacy you are building in your generation for the ones who come after you, all of it deserves an anchor, an act of agreement, something that says with your hands what this word has spoken over your spirit. Sow a seed right now, not because you have to, not as a transaction, but as a declaration of agreement with what was spoken over your birth. The person whose name is on your heart in this moment, the one you thought of when I began to speak, sow a seed in their name and in your own as an act of faith, that what was declared before your first breath is still active, still standing, still moving toward full expression. Visit the link in the description below, or scan the QR code on screen. What you sow from this place of knowing who you are will not return empty, not because of the giving itself, but because of the faith it represents. The declaration that you receive what was spoken over you, and you are ready to carry it forward. My child, as I spoke over you before your first breath, I speak over you again now, not because the first declaration was insufficient, The first declaration was complete. It held everything I needed to say about who you are and what you were sent to do, and how I have covered you, and what I have planned for the days still ahead of you. I speak it again now because you need to hear it in the full light of what you now know. You have spent your life carrying the weight of the declaration without the full knowledge of the declaration. You have pressed forward under the anointing without fully understanding what the anointing was, or where it came from, or why it felt the way it felt. You have endured the attacks of the enemy without fully understanding why you were targeted, or what the attacks were responding to. Now you know, and I speak the declaration again over someone who knows. Before you were formed, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Before any voice in the world had decided what to make of you, I had already written the truth. Before any wound was collected, before any attack was launched, before any cycle in your bloodline was allowed to press against you, before any season of confusion or isolation or loss or difficulty, before all of it, the declaration was already standing. You were sent, you were marked, you were covered. You were placed with full intention in a specific family, in a specific generation, at a specific moment in history, because that moment required exactly what I placed in you. The secret your birth has always held was never meant to remain hidden forever. It was waiting for the moment your spirit had endured enough to receive it, waiting for the season of your life when the weight of what you carry was about to find its expression. Waiting for now, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. That is the word of Isaiah 60:1, spoken over you, spoken over this day, spoken over every day that follows from this moment of receiving. The light that rises upon you is not a light you generate. It is the light of what I declared before your birth, breaking through the surface of your life in full expression. The glory that rises is not the glory of human achievement, or reputation, or recognition. It is the glory that was placed in you before you had any of those things. The glory of a divine assignment fully embraced by the one it was written for. My child, you have been carrying this since before you had words. Now you carry it with knowledge. Now you carry it with the full awareness of what you hold, and why it presses, and where it came from, and where it is going. Rise in that knowing. Carry it forward with the confidence of someone who has heard the truth of their own birth from the only voice that was present before the story began. Let me pray over you now. Father, I speak over this one who has received this word today. I confirm over them the declaration made before their formation. I speak their identity back to them in the full weight of what was written before their birth. I cover the days ahead with the same covering that was present on the day they arrived, and I release the full expression of what was placed in them before they had a name the world could read. Every weapon formed against them shall not prosper. Every voice that has tried to rename them by their wounds shall be silenced. Every cycle they were sent to break shall remain broken. Every generation that follows them shall inherit the open door they pressed through, and the name written on the white stone, the name that was always theirs, shall be known to them in increasing fullness from this day forward. Arise, shine. Your light has come. I speak specifically over the days ahead, my beloved, the days when the ordinary weight of living will press back and try to convince you that this word was emotional and momentary and does not belong to the practical ground of your actual life. I speak that the truth received in this moment is not contingent on the feeling that accompanied it. The declaration spoken before your birth was not an emotional statement. It was a divine act, and it stands in the place beyond feeling, beyond circumstance, beyond the silence of seasons, when I seem far and the weight seems heavier than the promise. I speak over your sleep tonight. I speak over your waking tomorrow. I speak over the next hard conversation, the next closed door, the next moment, when the weight of what you carry is not yet visible in the external evidence around you. In all of it, this stands: I knew you, I formed you, I set you apart. I am still forming you. I am still working out what I wrote before your first breath, and I will not stop until every word of that declaration has been fulfilled. You are not a story I started and left unfinished. You are a declaration I made before time that I am bringing to its full completion in time. And what I begin, my child, I complete. Type: the declaration stands.